Dungeons and Dragons Adventurer, issue 4. Right then, time to look at issue number 4 with our nice little bag and dice and clerics. Let's check it out. Here we are. To start off with, our dice today is just one big D20, complete with its own little nice pouch to carry it. Oh, it's stuck to the bag. Hope it hasn't ruined it. That's alright, I think it's just there, but this is huge. There it is, compared to the rest of the dice. And just slip it in the pouch. There we are. So issue 4 then, obviously last issue was Wizards. This issue we've got Clerics, multiple foe targets, explore the Sword Coast, and shine a light on the Zhentarim. So to start with, you can see this is quite a lawful issue. Not lawful, but a law-filled issue, I should say. And it's here, 4th issue comes with the large dice, the most commonly used dice in the game. It's an alternative for regular size, and look out for more large dice in future issues of the magazine, although I don't think I've seen any just yet. Nice to see that they've paired up this issue doing dwarves and clerics, as we have an actual dwarven cleric in the party. So you cover both bits at the same time. And then come to think about it, previous issues did do human rogue and halfling wizard. I didn't notice it then, but I've definitely pointed out now. Although I still haven't done the fighter class, but maybe that's in the next issue. So anyway, it starts off giving us more rules about spells, casting times and spell range. And a lot of it's just explaining a bit more. Obviously last issue dealt with spells to start with, so it goes a bit more into details about what the times and the range actually mean. I feel like I kind of knew it, but this narrows it all down. The only thing I've got here is it's got bonus actions. I still don't think they've told me anywhere what bonus actions are, just that some spells require bonus action to cast. I think that was one of the things I mentioned in the comparison in the magazines, that the original one said, oh, bonus actions or reactions are listed on here, and it wasn't actually listed. I'll have to scroll back through and see if I got them, but I feel like I don't know them yet. And then it just gives us more details about areas of effect. Only really covers cubes and spheres, because that's spells listed on the pre-generated characters, but you can have other spells of lines, cones and cylinders, which they say they'll cover in future issues. And if you want to completely avoid a spell, you need to have something that completely blocks it, so total cover to block the spell. And we move on to dwarves for characters, and as usual for the races, this isn't any specific details, it's just giving us a lot of background information about the dwarves. And again, we've got some types of dwarves. We've got gold dwarves and shield dwarves and grey dwarves as well. It doesn't cover hill dwarves though, which is a bit odd because we have a hill dwarf cleric, but maybe hill dwarves is one of these gold or shield, I don't know. And now we're going to move on to clerics, conduits for divine magic. And this just starts off obviously giving us the background. Interesting to note, it does say down here that not all priests are a cleric. So, you know, you go to the churches and you've got the priests and that who can sometimes do healing and other sort of services maybe, but they're not always clerics. Or maybe I'm wrong and they always have a cleric who does it all, I don't know. But clerics can be healers and warriors, calling down divine fire magic and having combat training and so forth. And here we talk more about clerics. So more background, but obviously actual some more game useful stuff, how all the clerics serve gods. It does say there not every cleric gets chosen, so some may turn to darker sides. And here the most important part of a cleric is actually choosing which god you want to serve. I feel like it's similar to when the wizards choose which school of conjuration they want, school of wizardry or something like that. And holy symbols, there we go, they can be anything basically. Now we move on to the cleric features. First level, so it's just talking about spell casting. And a lot of it's quite similar to the wizards, just instead of using intelligence bonuses, they use wisdom bonuses. Most of the stuff's the same, spell levels go from 1 to 9. Their attack bonus is proficiency plus the modifier, which is wisdom, not intelligence. Spell save DC is 8 plus proficiency plus wisdom. And I don't remember if I mentioned it out loud or if it's just something I've thought of afterwards, but I wasn't sure where they got all this proficiency stuff from, because looking at the character sheets, say if I get my cleric, I couldn't see anywhere where it doesn't say they're proficient in spell casting. It's not in their features and traits, but I think it's just a natural feature of magic users that they're proficient in casting spells, so they just add their general proficiency bonus up there, which was covered a bit more in spell proficiencies in character creation. Now that I've had a little bit more reread of that, skill proficiencies, not spell proficiencies. And then we just move into, we touched slightly on domains, but as our pre-generated cleric is a life domain disciple, it's just going to talk mainly about the life domain benefits. And it does say up there it's going to talk about the rest of the cleric domains in future issues. One interesting thing up here about divine domains is it is saying about how the life domain can be influenced by various different sorts of gods. You know, those outside the Forgotten Realms, agricultural ones, sun gods, gods of healing and so on. So I'm not sure if that means that clerics choose a deity and choose a domain and they're separate. So you could follow Pelor, the sun god, but you could have a different domain than life sort of thing. Because we know our cleric worships Ilmater, but does that mean that we could have had a different domain other than life? I'm sure when it comes to all the domains and probably talks about clerical deities, it will probably explain it all. But for now, I just don't know. We're not even halfway through the magazine and we move to the lore already. So we start off just talking about the Sword Coast, which I'm assuming is all of this section here on my map, possibly. Discussing the Sword Coast, it mainly talks about 3 of the biggest sort of cities in the area, or the great bastions of civilization, all of which I've heard of before, mostly from computer games. We've got Neverwinter. I used to play Neverwinter Nights ages ago, and here it is on our map near Phandalin. You know, it talks about Baldur's Gate, and all I hear about is Baldur's Gate, video games, board games, and so on. And Waterdeep, which I didn't know as well as the other 2, although I do know it from Lords of Waterdeep board game. But I didn't know it like these. I played video games before. This I didn't know until I played that board game. But there we go, little maps of all the areas anyway. And continue on with the Sword Coast, all about different nations, mountain strongholds, forest groves. It talks a bit about how the forests can be dangerous. You've got a lot of stuff to the north of nomads, independent human realms, even the Yuan-Ti, race of serpent folk. But yeah, it just talks about all of that stuff you can sort of find around the Sword Coast. And Lands of Adventure. It talks a bit more about the area we're in, and these are the northern foothills of the Sword Mountains where we've got the Phandalin, the Sword Mountains, Phandalin, etc. This text here all sounds similar to the lore in Phandalin, but it's not. It's a bit different. The only copy bit saying it takes a few minutes. It tells us a bit more detail about all the sort of area around, a bit more in depth than what we had originally about Phandalin. As well as going about the Sea of Swords, some of the islands you can find out in the sea. Obviously, the Sea of Swords next to the Sword Coast. And it goes on about the Underdark as well, which is quite a big thing from what I know, where you've got like the Dark Elves, Dark Dwarves, Drow and Duergar or something. And it stretches across the continent and so on. Lots of adventures to be had in the Underdark, although we haven't had any yet. Aha, so this issue brings us on to Lore B, which was missing before, which is monsters. So this is the one that sits in between locations and factions. So these are our first monsters we're going to cover. And vampires is our official first monster lore. Technically, I think it's our second monster lore because they talked about liches with the red wizards. So I class liches as a monster, but it's not official lore yet, just yet anyway. The official stats for vampires in the Forgotten Realms of Dungeons and Dragons, whether or not it's different to other sort of game situations or fantasy stories or whatever. They don't cast shadows or reflections. They can change into bats or mist at will. They can climb up walls and ceilings and heal wounds at an unnatural speed. But their weaknesses are sunlight burns them to the touch. Running water also hinders them. I don't know if that means touching it or they can't cross it or whatever. It doesn't say it in detail here. But they also can't enter any residence if they're not invited, which is a common one. And the last one is like the most well known, a wooden stake in the heart. Although it doesn't actually kill the vampire, it just can't move and is at the whim of its enemy, which would then allow you to easily kill it, but it's not an outright death like it has been shown to be. And we talk about Strahd von Zavarich, the very first D&D multiverse vampire. And so a bit more stuff about the vampires. Again, they must rest during the day, and it's got to be in its coffin, crypt or grave where they were buried. Or if the vampire wasn't buried, it's got to be under a foot of earth at the place where they transform to a vampire. And if they don't do it, they just dissolve into a mist and just float among the fog, sucking blood out of the unwary. And it says here about vampires will set up their lairs, normally some defensible places, so they actually tend to move their coffin or their foot of earth to where they want to be. And the area around it slowly warps, so you'll get increase in rats and bats, and foliage tends to wither and die. And they can get vampire spawns, who are under the control of the vampires, but if they ever drink the vampire's blood, become a fully fledged vampire themselves, not under their control. but they do regain their free will if the vampire dies. Our next faction we're going to look at, the Zhentarim. And these look like to be a network of mercenaries spread around the Forgotten Realms. The public sees them as the best guards and everything else, but deep behind the scenes they've got like a network of evil leaders who are just trying to extend their reach around for who knows what nefarious reasons. And they're based at the Darkhold, which is a fortress, not an evil book for the Scarlet Witch to use. And some guy called Perigost, or Perighost, is at the heart of it all. No one's ever seen him. Is he real? Is he many people? Is he a ghost? I think he's a ghost, but you know. And this faction doesn't really get on with all the others, but in times of need, they're still all band together. However, they want payment, so no matter, the world could be at risk, and they're like, okay, we'll come help you, but we still want all the gold coins for it. They firmly hold that everyone and everything has a price. And they are expanding, they'll take anyone, but they want loyalty, or who knows what they do to you. This box here is about how they're agents. They're quite capable fighters. Some of them even got winged snake companions, so they can carry messages around, you know, better than homing pigeons. But they only serve one master, so if the agent dies, the winged snake will probably just starve to death nearby, which is unfortunate. Encounter 4 for Adventure 1 is Daylight Robbery. Again, this is for Dungeon Masters only. If you're planning on playing this, use the chapters to skip ahead to the after the encounter. So, Daylight Robbery, and we're still just using our pre-generated level 1 characters. And the interesting bit here is it's all to do with a vampire's being transported in the background, and you guys are going to be hired to help do it, because something unfortunate incident means there's only one living human servant moving it. It says traded, hiring local adventurers, so I'm assuming that means these guys, but we'll find out in a bit. So this adventure's got quite a bit of background stuff, or this encounter's got quite a bit of background. So the lone human vampire servant survivor has spoken to the master of the Fandolin trading post, which is how you guys get hired. So you've actually got a convoy of 3 caravans, a convoy of 3 wagons that you need to get to the high road to join up with the other caravans. Including this young chap here, who's going to be your best friend if you can please him, for some sort of reward. And this is where the Zhentarim come in, because they want the money, so there's going to be a secret ambush to try and rob you of your cargo. So this encounter is quite simple. It's just you with a couple of commoners who don't really want to fight, but they've got stat blocks, so they might get attacked, up against a group of bandits who want all your stuff. So you can either let them have it or refuse. Either way, the vampire spawn's not going to let them have it. And this happens at sundown, so at some point, if the combat's still going on, there's a chance the vampire spawn might break out. If you guys surrender, the coffin gets opened, the vampire spawn gets destroyed, and various ways to end the encounter with some money, without. It varies. And then we just have our stat block for Eterine Zvari, the vampire spawn. Some interesting things to note is that she's got damage resistance to necrotic, and her bite attack can deal necrotic damage, which lowers character's max hit point. I don't know if that's a general trait of necrotic or if it's just a type, but I've seen necrotic a few times. It's never been explained. I'm assuming it's just a type. Same as in sunlight, she's going to take radiant damage. So if radiant seems like light, necrotic seems like dark. Unless they have specific, like, these are their effects, I think it's just elements, so light and dark. The same as, like, you'll have fire and ice and so on. So necrotic's just sort of dark damage, radiant's light damage. The running water problem I had earlier is solved. So it's acid damage from running water, so that hurts them. And apparently Stake in the Heart destroys her, which wasn't what it said in the text, unless I just got a bit confused. So there we are. That was issue 4. We've learned about clerics, vampires, we've had our adventure. And now, next time we can move on to issue 5, which has got another new and exclusive adventure. But this has got more undead. So we're getting a bit of an undead theme here. Liches, vampires, and now looks like skeletons, I don't know. Resistant, vulnerable, and immunity. So this might talk more about necrotic damage. Who knows? And we'll go to Neverwinter Wood and look at some dice. But anyway, if you follow the links, there'll be more stuff to do with the D&D magazines. Thanks for watching. Hope to catch you soon.